Welcome to Motivation at Hand. To know is to know how. Make your foot the foot that counts. Native Americans, on ancestral lands they dwell. Resilient spirits, stories of survival they tell. Dispossessed of land, resources, and rights. They persevere through hardship, with all their might. An estimated 5.6 million people in the US, 1.7%, classify themselves as American Indian, Alaska Native, or a combination of Native and one or more races. In 2020, the Black or African American, descendants of the enslaved, estimated 41.1 million population, accounted for 12.4% of all people living in the United States. These two non-immigrant groups face significant disparities in various aspects of life compared to the status quo immigrant populations in the United States. A recent example, the suspension of the Fearless Strivers Grant Contest, highlights the ongoing challenges in rectifying the stark inequalities in venture capital funding for Black women-owned businesses. Less than 1% of venture capital funding goes to Black women. Between 2009 and 2017, companies started by Black women received a mere 0.0006% of the total venture capital funding raised by startups, according to The Guardian's article. Furthermore, a 2019 report found that Black entrepreneurs' loan requests are 3 times less likely to be approved than white entrepreneurs. These disparities are rooted in historical trauma, systemic racism, and ongoing discrimination. Housing. Both Native Americans and Black Americans experience higher rates of housing insecurity and discrimination compared to the status quo immigrant groups of America. Native Americans living on reservations often grapple with inadequate housing, overcrowding, and limited access to basic amenities. Similarly, Black Americans are more likely to live in segregated, under-resourced neighborhoods, and face barriers to homeownership due to a history of redlining and discriminatory lending practices. Domestic violence. Native American women and Black women experience disproportionately high rates of domestic violence compared to other groups. This can be attributed to a complex interplay of factors, including historical trauma, socioeconomic disparities, and systemic barriers to accessing support services. Incarceration. Black Americans, both men and women, are disproportionately represented in the U.S. criminal justice system. This disparity is rooted in a history of over-policing, racial profiling, and discriminatory sentencing practices. Native Americans also experience higher rates of incarceration compared to the general population, often stemming from a lack of resources and jurisdiction issues on reservations. Healthcare. Native Americans and Black Americans face significant health disparities compared to the American population. They experience higher rates of chronic diseases, such as diabetes and heart disease, and have lower life expectancies. These disparities are linked to limited access to quality healthcare, discrimination within the healthcare system, and a history of medical exploitation and mistrust. Homelessness. Native Americans and Black Americans are overrepresented in the homeless population compared to status quo Americans. This can be attributed to a combination of factors, including poverty, housing discrimination, and a lack of affordable housing options. For Native Americans, homelessness is also tied to the legacy of forced displacement and the erosion of traditional support systems. It is important to recognize that while immigrant populations may also face challenges related to housing, domestic violence, incarceration, healthcare, and homelessness, the experiences of Native Americans and Black Americans are uniquely shaped by their specific histories of oppression, trauma, and ongoing systemic racism in the United States. Addressing these disparities requires a comprehensive approach that acknowledges the root causes and works to dismantle the structural barriers that perpetuate inequality. Descendants of slaves, a history of pain. Shackled by oppression, a lingering stain. Reparations denied, wealth gap ever wide. Forgotten Americans of struggles cast aside. Much appreciation to you for giving of your time with us at Motivation at Hand. To know is to know how. We trust you will come back soon.